When you say Keralite Islam, it requires a bit of elaboration because Keralite Islam has been evolving from ever since Islam came into this land. Because Islam as such had certain traditional markers, you can say, which were slowly or gradually it changed into different kinds of shades during the past centuries here in Kerala. Islam came very early here, very early. One of my friends once said, maybe after 2-3 centuries you got Kerala. I said there are different points of view saying that Islam came very early here, and we have even now mosques which are old, more than 1,100, 1,200 year old mosques over here, even now. So that shows that Islam came here very early through merchandise, and most of the Muslims in Kerala, they follow Shafi. So these facts are well known. So this Shafi madhab and a little bit of Hanafis, they are in the mountain range, that is on the eastern side of Kerala. We have maybe less than 5% of Hanafis school of thought. So that kind of difference between madahib or the schools of thought was absent when compared with other places in Kerala in the earlier days. Later days there were differences depending upon the tariqas which were followed and different ulama or alims. They had certain following and then had differences of opinion. Say for example in our region, which is a very popular thing that we say, that the ulama who stayed with the state sometimes, or the colonial masters, and the ulama who were with the people, you can say that could be one style. Or there could be differences among ulama, saying that the Kondoti group which followed a particular kind of tariqa, and the Pandani group where Sheikh Makdums were used as a hub of activities as another group, another school of thought. So these differences you have in early Islam in Kerala, and we have right now, we do not have these kind of differences much, and that has to be taken into account when we discuss Keralite Islam right now. That is the point, because before we had many differences, but those differences faded off, and post-colonial days, that is after probably 30s and 40s, we have a totally different style of debates and discourses within Islam in Kerala. Right now, when we see these differences that started off, you can say during 1930s, politically it was by Muslim League. They started in early 1900s, that is when Muslim League was formed in 1906 in Dhaka, or later on when Muslim League's formation had repercussions in Kerala. That could be one point. And there is another thing, that is a group which is more of a literary activities they concentrated more in, that is you can say as Jamaat Islami, or which is somewhat similar to Muslim Brotherhood. So they started off during 1930s in Kerala. So that brought in another stream, and of course we call it Aikya Sangam. That was another activity. That is a group of modern Muslims who stressed upon modern education, as well as stressed more on probably studying the modern topics and disciplines, and the whole lot of differences arose when they started debating, and their discourses mainly stressed upon the modern areas. So this was the difference, and you can see politically, Keralite Muslims had Muslim League, that too more towards Malabar, and Travancore Cochin region had totally a different shade again. So there Muslims were more evenly divided into different political groups, that is they call usually secular, that is Congress or left parties and so on and so forth. So this was political groupings, and then Jamaat Islami was religio-political, or you can say theo-political more of, because they had a theological discourse on one side, and they had in the meanwhile they had political discourse as well. So these two discourses were going hand in hand. At times they became more of political, at times they became more theological. So this was a hybrid kind of group, and they slowly evolved. And then had as IK Sangam, as I told you, that was more of modernist style. I cannot term them as or brand them as modernist. Rather, they were more closer to the Wahhabi school of thought, you can say. Again, if I say Wahhabi, now in the international media, the moment you say Wahhabi, it becomes a synonym of terrorism, because there is a big problem there, because Wahhabi is not always a terrorist group. So that we have to understand, and what is terrorism becomes another discourse, and that is out of the scope of this small tiny discussion. So and then a traditional group which had always there. I mean they were slowly evolving and getting modernized, and debating with Jamaat Islami, debating sometimes with Muslim League itself, debating sometimes with IK Sangam and so on. So these were the streams which had 3 or 4 streams. And never ever we could be away from the international issues, because when there is, say for example, when there is a decolonization, Muslims of Kerala, they can't be away from the decolonization and decolonization and the aftermath of decolonization there as well. So this we have to understand, and then try to place ourselves in Keralite Islam and discuss Keralite Islam now. So now there are two issues, two streams which we have to face, because socially these groups, when they evolved, debates and discourses went more into theological as well as sometimes political. When the political arena became very strong and turbulent, then of course they were pulled into political. Say for example, decolonization time, of course they wanted to discuss what political stand we have to take. And for example, Babri demolition time, everybody wanted to discuss Babri demolition. That became more of a political issue than a theological issue. So after Babri, what Muslims have to, our security as a community, and how to defend the Muslim community and how to survive here. And this became a political issue at that time. So, and then after that again, 9/11 came in. When 9/11 came in, all the discourses again went to that direction. So either it became more political or it became theological. Most of the time social issues were untouched. That is the basic, that is the core issue which I would try to stress in this very small kind of a talk discussion we take upon. So these religious organizations, when we call religious, they are more of theological organization. They controlled almost all the people, you can say, because we run 6, would you believe, 6 dailies in Malayalam. So 6 dailies are controlling the people, because Malayali or a Keralite Muslim or any person has got a habit of reading a newspaper in the morning. Whether he or she is involved, they always try to read a newspaper in the morning. So they all have a second newspaper in the form of their group, the group's daily. If they are a Jamaat Islami person, they have to read Madhyamam as a daily. Similarly, a Muslim League person had Chandrika with them, that is the different dailies which they had, daily newspapers. So media, now they have entered the visual as well, I mean visual area also. There too they have their own, they are trying to create their own deltas, and they are trying to educate their group, that group, with their own if you can call ideology, then that kind of an idea, their idea. So what happens is, you have, if you are going even for Hajj, you go with your group. So you have less chances of interacting with other people and knowing others, what they believe, what kind of Islam they practice, what kind of Islam they do, I mean, in their everyday life. These kind of things are kept away from them. Only when the existential question comes, like in Marad or hand chopping incident, these kind of incidents come, and then they say, okay, there is some problem which we should collectively face, or these questions are addressed to Muslims in toto, not separately to Mujahid, that is the Salafi group, or to Jamaat Islami, or to Muslim League, or to Sunni. So even these traditional Sunni groups now have differences as to how to interact with other groups. That was the basic issue with them, whether the other groups other than Sunni groups, when I say Sunni, that is the traditional Muslims of Kerala, they should interact with Jamaat Islami or Salafi groups or other Tariqa groups, whatever, or Jamaat Tabligh, all these groups, they had to formulate a policy. On the basis of this policy, they too differed, and they too had newspapers, and they too had all kinds of media tools to control the group. So this factionalism has caused immense damage in the intellectual area for the Muslims of Kerala, or Keralite Islam, you can say, because major research were hampered because they were mostly interacting with their own kind of ideas, and they were reading their own books. I write book and you read book, and you read and I write. I write this. You write and I read. This kind of a practice was going on. So because of this, they had very less interaction with other Muslim groups, let alone with other communities. Because we have very strong communities like Irava community, which constitutes 26% or 25% of Kerala population of 30 million, 32, 33 million. And we do have Nair community. They too are around 15% or somewhere around 15, more or less 15%. And we have very strong presence of Dalit communities also, that is less than 10, though they are politically and socially getting equipped these days. So these communities or these castes or groups, Keralite Islam had very, very less of interaction. Just for the sake of interaction, at times we do interact, otherwise that thereby we are not, or Keralite Islam is not realizing what exactly is happening in the social arena. So that suffered immensely because of this factionalism we had, or Keralite Islam had for the recent years. I should stress, when I say recent years, I should stress upon a landmark that one could understand as more prominent as the Gulf, the West Asian countries. Early 70s, Muslims of Kerala started migrating to West Asian countries, where the currency was stronger than ours. Obviously that brought in many changes among Muslim community in Kerala, Keralite Islam, in the form of self-reliance. Their own businesses started flourishing, and they started having their own, kind of self-respect because of their owning property and land and things like that, because land owning was one of the important indicators which we should consider. But meanwhile, this factionalism became more and more prominent when these smaller groups started raising funds from and relying on them immensely, and then slowly that became another issue. So 1970s on, these issues became more and more prominent. Now slowly Muslims have realized, or Keralite Islam is getting into another stage where every group has got to have a set of intellectuals to move this on, and they have to keep these intellectuals inside. But with the advent of internet and social media and of the like, people started venturing out. It is extremely difficult to keep within a group, my intellectuals with my group. It's extremely difficult because intellectuals, basically, they will try to venture out for more material, and they started moving into different secular institutions for their further studies, and they started interacting with different kinds of shades of people, and also they started reading more and more material on the internet. Then that provided them new avenues, and they started converging to, they have just started to converge to certain points, because they started searching for their roots first, and they found out that these kind of differences were marginal during those days, and slowly they realized that future could be the same if they can converge on certain issues which are haunting Keralite Islam very badly. Say for example, their investment, where to invest and what to invest and how to invest. Then women, how to get them educated, how in the social arena women should intervene, and how they should run the families, how they should educate their women folks. Then as a society, their education, whether they should go only for engineering and medicine. These issues are common issues. These are not issues of Keralite Islam. These are the issues of Kerala. So they started realizing that these are the issues which we are also facing on one side, and theological issues should be also addressed, but it is not pushed to the backseat mostly. They are addressing these issues, and meanwhile they are seeing the social issues as well. So here we have to see the differences of opinion slowly dying out when they address the social issues mainly, rather than these theological or political so-called created issues. Sometimes these political issues are. So the idea behind our work, that is, I represent other books. I am managing editor of other books, which is a publishing house established in 2003 in Calicut, which is a southern Indian state. So here what we concentrate more on is the classical writings in Kerala on Keralite Islam, or you can't call it Keralite Islam and Kerala society, because the first writings were done way back in early Islamic days, because in Arabic it was written when Malayalam was not at all written language. So we walked back. We started off with Tuhfatul Mujahideen, which was published in 1500s. Then we realized that there is a dearth of understanding on early Islam of Kerala, and started on publishing in this area, and it has got an immense response, a wonderful, massive response from 20 to 35 group. I mean, readership is always between this, because that shows that they want to know the history of Kerala, particularly Muslims also, because since they are from that cultural and religious background, they wanted to know more. So we started publishing on and on. But now we get from all shades, that to a younger generation, they come and read and interact, they write, they review, they do all kinds of things on these books. Mostly the books on Muslims of Kerala. The first work on Muslims of Kerala in English was originally done by Roland Miller. Even that work is being translated now. It will be published within a couple of weeks or so. So because of this, Muslims, we realized that we have to do this work more and more, and that will bring the Muslim youth or Keralite Muslim youth to understand what was their past, and that obviously will tell them what should be your future and how to work along hand in hand with the stronger and the other communities in Kerala with respect to social or educational or political arenas. So this publishing groups, when we see other publishing, there are publishing groups which are, I won't name any, because each group has got publishing wings, but unfortunately most of the publishing is literature becomes either blaming the other group or telling why we are absolutely right, why this group is right and why the other group is wrong. I mean, this was done, but slowly this is also fading off because the coming generation is losing interest, one, and number two, Malayalam reading is coming down. Now people try to read either English in original or even Arabic in original because they know Arabic as well as English. So Malayalam literature as such and the advent of internet has caused this decline. So the younger generation, they go for English and their differences are less because the differences of Keralite Islam is more prominent in Malayalam, not in Arabic or in English. So you go to Arabic or into English, your differences or you merge there. So this could be used, we thought, to engage the Mapala Muslims or even Muslims of Kerala as such to a certain kind of a dialogue and discourse. You can't call it dialogue because they have more things in common than things to differ. So bringing these groups or people into public sphere is a question. Because bringing into public sphere in the sense that mostly they talk to their own people. Like if I am a Sunni, I talk to Sunnis. I am a Jamaat-e-Islami person, I talk to Jamaat-e-Islami only. And try to tell others that I speak to everyone. I mean, these younger people who are working with these kind of groups, they have to formulate and devise certain tools to communicate with the public sphere because they have to sharpen mostly. These are not advices, rather experiences which we had. When we tell, okay, Muhammad, one title, we have brought Muhammad into market, then people say, oh, Muhammad, okay, you are Muhammad. No, we say, okay, it is not our Muhammad, it is Muhammad of everybody. And it was written by written by Martin Links. Martin Links wrote, he was a Shakespeare expert and he wrote it in England, and this could be read by everybody. It is not that it could be read only by Muslims. So it has to become a part of a literature of public sphere. So this is a struggle. It takes time because there are a lot of stigmas again. As I told you before, Babari and then 9/11 and love jihad and so on. There are so many hand chopping and Muslims have done this and that, and they have a grotesque picture which is painted. So this is what we are trying to address, and we do not know how far we have gone. 10 years we have survived, and we have got, as I told you, wonderful response especially from the youth of Kerala and also the other scholars. When they come in search of Keralite Islam, many of them come to the other books and then search, and we are trying to bring out one more title without which I can't conclude this, because the architecture of Keralite Islam was more traditional before, and it has become more Indo-Saracen or Indo-Persian or Persian architecture later. 1960s onwards, or to be precise 70s onwards again, our mosques became minaret and dome oriented. Prior to that, our mosques, Keralite mosques, were not at all minaret and dome based. It was basically on traditional architecture. So we are trying to bring out an album in the sense print album of older mosques which are older than 400 years. Around 100 mosques we are shortlisted. 25 mosques we are shortlisted from 100 mosques which are still surviving in Kerala, and this will bring out. This will make people understand more how Keralite Islam is deeply rooted in traditional culture, and how Keralite Islam is not much different from Kerala as such. With this, I feel I have tried to touch upon some areas which is a very, very vast topic, and in which I am not at all an expert. So this one has to understand, but as a publisher, I think I have touched upon various areas where I can. And thank you so much for